Today's third session will a minute. Please take your seat and make sure that your mobile phone is turned off or be in silent. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let us begin the third session of the study days. My name is Shihyun Teresa Liu, and I'm very pleased to join this memorable event. For the last 2 days, we have been discussing about various topics of the theme, Peace in the Digital World. Today, we are going to talk about protection of our common home. As you all know, sustainability is one of the main issues these days. We cannot emphasize enough the importance of the environment. Especially through COVID-19, we confirm that there is a certain relationship between infectious disease and climate change. Therefore, we have to think about the ways to protect our home, the earth. Also, we are going to discuss about the role of digital technology. Let's watch the video first.
Session 3. Protection of our common home. Droughts, unprecedented heat waves, and floods. Recently, the Earth has been suffering from abnormal climates. Global warming is an ongoing issue that cannot be ignored any longer. And it's a common task that humanity must strive to solve together. People are not the only ones suffering from the climate crisis. During the past 50 years, the size of the global wildlife population has declined by about 2/3, and porpoises, tigers, and polar bears have become endangered species. In his promulgation of Laudato Si in 2015, Pope Francis called the earth our common home. When God created the heaven and the earth, we must remember that he entrusted man with the responsibility of caring for the Garden of Eden. The earth is not our own. It was entrusted to us, and humanity cannot exist without earth. Man and earth share a common destiny. Scientists responding to climate crisis say that the rise of global average temperature by 1.5 degrees compared to the time before the Industrial Revolution is the critical point. In 2021, the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference was held in Glasgow, Scotland, aiming to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Although 105 countries agreed to stop deforestation by 2030 and reduce methane emissions by 30% compared to 2020 levels. Some analyze that with such passive measures, it would be difficult to prevent the rise in global average temperature. Actively responding to global warming and the climate crisis is a choice for our future. Achieving explosive development after the Industrial Revolution, mankind has undergone an era of development and consumption. It is not easy to give up on a way of life that has become accustomed to materialistic benefits and advantages of civilization for such a long time. However, for the future of our common home, the earth, we need immediate action to change our behavior. Pope Francis also said that we need to reflect on and improve our way of life.
Reflexionamos sobre nuestro estilo de vida, sobre cómo la forma de alimentarnos, de consumir, de desplazarnos, o el uso que hacemos del agua, de la energía y de los plásticos.
Since 2015, the Catholic Church has designated September 1st as the World Day of Prayer for Care of Creation, and from this day until October 4th, the feast day of Saint Francis of Assisi. This period is spent as the season of creation. In order to protect the earth entrusted to us from climate crisis, Christians must spend each day as if it was the season of creation. Instead of only worrying with words, we must do all we can, each in our own singular space. Catholic communicators must use their talents to raise awareness of the seriousness of the climate crisis and to mobilize people's attention and action. To restore God's order of creation and to protect our common home, the earth, we must act right now, right at this moment.
Renuevo mi llamado urgente a responder a la crisis ecológica. El clamor de la tierra y el clamor de los pobres no dan para más. Cuidemos la creación, don de nuestro buen Dios creador.
I got the message that we have to remember our home, the earth, is gift from God, and we human beings have responsibility to take care of our nature. Now, let me introduce the keynote speaker of the third session, Dr. Cynthia Moe Lobeda. She's working as a professor of theological and social ethics at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary and the Graduate Theological Union. She's a co-founder and director of the Climate Justice and Faith Center. Also, she is the author of 6 books, including Resisting Structural Evil, Love as Ecological Economic Vocation, which is the winner of Notorious Book Award in Social Justice. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it to come here with us, so we'll have pre-recorded keynote speech. Let's take a look.
Hello. I am thrilled with the topic of this Congress, peace in the digital world, and with the core commitments of this organization. According to your website, SIGNIS and its members will harness the power of the media to promote peace, end quote. And I am moved also by the wise breadth of meaning that you and your leadership give to the quest for peace. That your understanding of peace includes, I quote, transforming cultures along the lines of justice, reconciliation, the dignity of all people, and ecological flourishing. This is very much in line with the understanding of peace outlined by Pope Francis in his encyclical Laudato Si. You have charged me with laying out ecological dimensions of the quest for peace under the rubric of protecting our common home, and to link this with matters of social justice so integral to Catholic tradition. You are so wise to include this challenge, protecting our common home, in a 2022 World Congress. Our moment in time is pivotal. Your leaders, in describing what this particular session should address, were correct in saying, I quote, "The environment is a quintessential element for the survival of humankind," end quote. As one South African climate expert has said, the next 5 to 7 years may be the most important in human history, end quote. Yes, humankind hovers on a perilous precipice, falling over the edge, which is inevitable unless we make enormous changes, means climate catastrophe of proportions unimaginable. It would destroy the conditions for peace and indeed for humane life on Earth. That future, however, is not inevitable. If we act with concerted global effort, wisdom, spiritual strength, and political courage, now and in the next 3 to 7 years, we can avert the worst of climate catastrophe. Therefore, each of you, communications and media experts, with your skills and knowledge, you have a key role to play. What you do in the next months and very few years matters, and it matters profoundly. You are blessed. You have invaluable tools, skills, and knowledge. You are communicators. What is communicated publicly and how effectively it is communicated will have life and death import for humankind and all of God's creation now and for centuries to come. So, here is the question that I put before you. Will you communicate both the gravity of the crisis and the grounds for hope and moral spiritual power to build the verdant and humane future required for peace? I am not a Catholic, but I have deep respect for many aspects of Catholic faith and social teachings. So much so that I taught for 10 years at a Jesuit university and I relished it. There I learned a first principle of Catholic moral theology. It is that living rightly in the world requires daring to see and face what actually is going on. This entails telling the truth about where painful injustice that causes suffering for so many people may hide from other people behind the blinders of privilege and comfort. We call this faithful truth-telling. Truth-telling, for the purposes of this session, means daring to face the truth about what the high-consuming parts of humankind are, through climate change, doing to Earth's life systems, and what this means for impoverished people around the globe. They are the most climate vulnerable of the human family. That truth-telling leads into some terrible terrain. Therefore, let us prepare ourselves for that trek by returning first to the very foundations of existence, the bedrock of Catholic faith, and a profound source of hope. It is this: the gracious love of God, made flesh in a dark-skinned Palestinian lower-class Jew named Jesus of Nazareth. This gracious love surpasses every force in heaven or earth. This love, for each of us personally and for Earth's entire web of life, will never cease. Let that promise flood over you. Let it sink into your bones and spirit and embrace you. In the words of Pope Francis, the Creator does not abandon us. Well, from this starting point flow yet more truths. Consider 3 of them deeply. First, this God is at play in the world, breathing life and healing into it. This Spirit is present within, among, and beyond us. And next, we human creatures, we are called and created to recognize God's healing and liberating love, to receive it, relish it, and trust it. And finally, after receiving God's love, we are to embody it in the world by loving self and neighbor as God loves. Fundamental to loving neighbor in the Catholic tradition is seeking peace and justice. Moreover, and this is critical, Neighbor love in Catholic tradition pertains not only to our interpersonal relationships. It is the guide also for how we are to shape our societies and social systems, including economies. This is what you are doing in this conference, and it is a foundational commitment of SIGNIS. As stated by the president of the organizing committee for this Congress, I quote, "I strongly believe that SIGNIS members engaged in the media sector must stand at the forefront to guide other Catholics in creating a beautiful, livable, and conflict-free world." End quote. Hear, hear. Yes, the vocation of the human being is to build lives and societies that love neighbor by seeking justice, peace, and Earth's well-being, all of which are interdependent. This is where you come in as players. You bring the skills, knowledge, and tools of communications and media expertise to this great human calling. It is an astounding moment in history to take seriously these foundational claims of Catholic faith. Holding on to them, venture with me now into the terrifying terrain. Dare to step into a reality that haunts me. But hear me well, we will not stay in that dark landscape. We will move from it into life-giving hope. So my comments move through 3 parts. Part 1 we have done. It was called Beloved Creatures, called to neighbor love that is peacemaking, justice-seeking, and earth-honoring. Part 2 will be who we are in the age of climate catastrophe. And part 3, the role of media experts and communicators. So on to part 2, who we are in the age of climate catastrophe. As we go on, please bear in mind 2 important things. 1, we are talking about the impact of our lives, not our intentions. And 2, we are talking about the impact of our collective lives, not just our individual lives. Who causes climate change in relationship to who suffers and dies from it is a foremost moral and spiritual issue. The consequences of climate change are not suffered equally by Earth's people, nor are the world's people equally responsible. In general, those least responsible for this crisis are suffering and dying first and foremost from it. This is made utterly clear by Pope Francis, who wrote in his encyclical Laudato Si, I quote, "The greatest effects of all attacks on the environment are suffered by the poorest. A true ecological approach must integrate questions of justice in debates on the environment." End quote. Yes, the race and class dimensions of this injustice are stark. Caused overwhelmingly by the world's high-consuming people, climate change is wreaking death and destruction, especially on impoverished people, who are disproportionately people of color. The island nations that will be rendered unlivable by rising sea levels, subsistence farmers whose crops are lost to climate change, and many coastal people without resources to protect against and recover from the fury of climate-related weather disaster. These are not the people largely responsible for greenhouse gas emissions, nor are they, for the most part, white. In short, the climate crisis reinforces the social inequities, such as race and class. And these inequities render peace an elusive dream. Climate change foments conflict. Take a closer look. With global warming, dry places become drier and wet places wetter. With drought, in food vulnerable areas, death stalks. Oxfam's report, Climate Change versus Food Security, declares one of climate change's most savage impacts on humanity will be increased hunger. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change links global warming to breakdown of food systems. Let it sink in. When food is very scarce, if free market rules govern food prices, the poorest starve. The World Bank warns that drought-affected areas will increase to around 44% of global cropland by 2100, with sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia hard hit. Rising seas could threaten more than a fourth of Africa's people and drown some island states and low-lying areas. This means hundreds of millions of climate refugees. Increasing hunger, poverty, and displacement undo peace. No less alarming, desertification, which will strike hard in the Arab world and southern Africa, provokes war. In wealthier countries too, the wrath of climate change hits vulnerable people most fiercely. Economically impoverished people, who are, yes, disproportionately people of color, are most vulnerable to extreme storms, fires, illness, and food and housing insecurity brought on by climate change. And the cause of this disaster is the uncontrolled burning of fossil fuels, especially by high-consuming societies and high-consuming people in other societies. That, dear friends, includes many of us here gathered. By doing nothing or doing little, we actively bring on the catastrophe. Enough, enough, you cry, as do I. Enough, say no more, see no more. But people called to build peace are called to see more deeply. That some cause climate change while others suffer most from it is but the first layer of the moral travesty. The second layer is no less horrific. Climate-privileged societies and sectors, certainly including my country, the USA, may respond to climate change in ways that, at least in the short term, protect us from its worst impacts, while relegating others to devastation. This has become so very real to me with the fires that ravaged my state of California. The air where I live was for some days the worst in the world. Our school was closed. We were instructed to go home and stay indoors with air filters on. However, thousands of homeless people in my area spent all day and all night, day after day, outside breathing that dangerous air. While I could protect myself with filtered indoor air, they could not. Likewise, wealthier sectors can build seawalls and reinforce homes against fierce storms, without enabling more impoverished peoples to do the same. The third layer of the travesty I learned from India. Measures to reduce carbon emissions may further damage poor and marginalized communities. To illustrate, food is lost when crops go for biofuel instead of food. Or communities may be destroyed by dams that are built to generate hydropower to replace oil and gas. All three layers are shaped deeply by economic systems, where enormous corporations have the legal freedom to maximize profits at the expense of Earth's ecologies and at the expense of people that they exploit. Then we are sucked collectively into deeper, ever deeper, into ways of life that are deadly for Earth's life support systems and for impoverished people. These soul-shattering realities of climate sin are embedded in our lives. However, Now this is crucial. The most important thing I have to say, and it is this: an alternative, justice and peacemaking response to the climate catastrophe is utterly possible. This crisis could catalyze far more equitable, democratic, compassionate, and peaceful ways of living and organizing our life in common. As Pope Francis insists, I quote, "Humanity still has the ability to work together in building our common home," end quote. Yes, we can insist with prophetic and fierce love that our societal responses to the climate crisis serve the well-being of climate vulnerable people rather than furthering climate injustice. Media and communications professionals are central to that vital endeavor. So we move now to my comments, part 3. Part 3, the role of media professionals and climate communicators. What does it mean to live out the vocation of the human being? That is, to love neighbor as self, with a love that builds more equitable and ecological societies. What does it mean to live out this vocation as a media and communications professional? At this precarious turning point in human history, what does it mean to bring your skill in communications and media to the pan-human great work of our day, reversing our mad dash toward climate catastrophe and instead forging ways of living that enable God's good creation to flourish, including the people most threatened by the climate catastrophe and the poverty linked to it? You are the experts in media and communications, not I. You are far more able to respond to that question than am I. And I assume that the panels that follow my comments will do so. But I can provide some pointers. Or rather, I will suggest one map of the way. The most important item on a map is the end point. Where are we trying to go? Well, we have just named it, as has Pope Francis. It is a world in which Earth's ecosystems, including climate, thrive, and a world in which all people have the necessities for fullness of life. That is, we are seeking a dramatic shift in the moorings of life as we know it. A move from societies revolving around fossil-fueled economies that use up Earth's goods and exploit many people in order to maximize profit for a few. And a move into societies based on renewable energy economies that foster social equity and support Earth's ecosystems. This means a shift, first to low carbon economies and then to zero carbon economies. It means economies that divest from fossil fuels and invest heavily in renewable energy sources such as wind and solar, and use far less energy. This shift also means economies in which local communities, including indigenous communities and other historically marginalized groups, have a real say in the decisions that impact their lives. Pope Francis in Laudato Si calls this an ecological conversion. Now, this endpoint on the map may sound like a utopian dream. However, it is not. First, it is not just a utopian dream because at least parts of it are a bioplanetary necessity. The planet, Earth, cannot for many more years sustain human life if we carry on with fossil-fueled and fundamentally extractive economies that do not account for the damage caused by that extraction and fossil fuel orgy. That form of economy is literally destroying the climate conditions and the water, soil, and biodiversity upon which human life utterly depends. Secondly, we know that this endpoint is not a utopian dream because people and groups around the world are very practically engaged in making this shift. The movements for climate justice linked to racial, economic, and gender justice is the largest social movement the world has ever known. Religion, including the Catholic Church, is playing a vital role. Yet, the burning question remains, what are the pathways toward this ecological conversion? How on earth are we, this young species called human, to make such a dramatic shift? It seems too big, complex, multifaceted, controversial. And for the people gathered here, what is the vital role of media and communications professionals in this sacred work? So let us look with a more practical eye at the components of this shift, this ecological conversion, so that you may consider how most fruitfully to bring your skills and knowledge to it. According to Pope Francis, the ecological economic conversion requires shifts on 3 levels of human social life in the high-consuming world. 1, individuals and households. 2, broader social systems, including public policy and economic institutions. And 3, worldview or consciousness, including spirituality. All 3 interact with and influence the other 2. Change in just 1 or 2 of these levels without the 3rd will not suffice. For example, while reducing the greenhouse gas emissions of households and individuals, the 1st level, is necessary, without the larger systemic changes, including public policy, that is the 2nd level, we will not make it. You, communications experts, have a strong and crucial role in the sacred work of ecological economic conversion, a role in enabling change at all 3 levels. To illustrate, media can elevate and make visible, I'm illustrating the 1st level. Media can elevate and make visible the movements of individuals and households who are seeking to eat, transport themselves, and meet energy needs with renewable energy. And for high-consuming people, are seeking to reduce consumption. And seeking to do business with businesses committed to carbon neutrality and justice for workers. The world is full of these people, but they are relatively invisible in the media. The media can make them visible. That inspires others. On the 2nd level, the systemic level, including public policy change, communications professionals and media can help to expose the danger of an economy, global, national, and local, that is dedicated to maximizing profit regardless of the cost to Earth's climate, soil, and waters. Media can highlight public policy initiatives that will curb emissions, save forests, limit extractive industries, protect water and air, and end the practice of shipping toxic wastes, plastics, and garbage from wealthy nations to impoverished ones. Media can highlight this kind of public policy proposal and change. And what of the worldview level, the 3rd level? Our worldviews determine what we assume to be normal. Who is considered worthy of respect and rights? What kinds of acts and relationships are deemed right and good? Worldview determines what we assume is the purpose of economic life. Ecological conversion in worldview, to illustrate, might include a shift from seeing food as a commodity for maximizing profit, even if it means endangering the climate, to seeing food as a human right to be raised in ways that preserve the soil, water, and climate, and that provide a livelihood for those who work in agriculture. Media can help to cultivate that change in consciousness, that change in culture. Yes, the path to a sustainable future includes change on all three levels: household or individual, social systems, and worldviews or consciousness. My point here is that you, as media and communications experts, you have an utterly crucial role in that sacred work. So, in closing, we began by glimpsing who we are as beloved creatures called to neighbor love that seeks justice, peace, and Earth's well-being. We moved in part 2 to acknowledge the role that high-consuming parts of the human family are playing in generating a climate crisis that foments not peace but conflict and suffering, and is fraught with racial and economic injustice. Finally, in part 3, we sketched paths toward ecological conversion, a map that includes change in 3 levels of social being: household or individual, social systems, including economies and public policy, and worldview or consciousness. For you, the most important point is this: media and communications professionals may play, and I would argue are called by God to play, a vital role in effecting ecological conversion in these 3 arenas. That role is to bring your knowledge and skill in radio, television, cinema, video, print media, media education, internet, and new technologies to the sacred, pan-human, great work of our day that is rapidly reversing our deadly dash into climate catastrophe, and instead forging ways of living that enable our common home to flourish, including the people most threatened by the climate crisis and the poverty linked to it. At this turning point in human history, may you accept this sacred calling. May you invest your God-given gifts of creativity, initiative, brilliance, time, and energy in building the verdant and humane future required for peace. I thank you.
It's 5:40 p.m. west side of the States where she lives, so I guess Dr. Cynthia Moel-Lobeda must be online watching us. Thank you, Doctor. Due to the restrictions by COVID-19, the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul is held both online and offline, which means even though you're not here in this Hasang Hall, you can participate in this Congress through Metaverse, YouTube, and Zoom, wherever you are right now. Feel free to join us, and we'll appreciate it if you leave a comment. Finally, we'll have our speakers onto the stage. Please give them a big round of applause. Let me introduce the moderator for this session is Professor Yoon Yi-suk. She got her PhD at the University of Maryland and used to work as a professor at Kent State University. She's majoring in international politics and environmental cooperation and now studying under environmental politics in East Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Professor Yoon Yi-suk, the Division of International Studies at Kwangwon University.
Well, Shihyun, thank you very much for a really nice introduction about me. Well, good morning. It is really great honor for me to serve as moderator at this third session of study days at the SIGNIS conference 2022. The third session is about very critical issues, about particularly how to protect our future, our common home. And this session consists of two really interesting mini sessions about what is present situation or our days, and then what we have to do for our better future. And this session has four very excellent presentations and two discussions. And about the presenters and discussant, I'm not going to introduce you because they're all famous. And then you can find what kinds of people they are out of the program book. And before we move on the actual presentation, due to really the critical time pressure, I like to remind you all that we have a strict guideline about the time limits of each presentation. So each presentation should be about 30 minutes. And after four presentations, we can move on to two discussion sessions, and each discussion is allowed only 5 minutes for really good comments and questions and discussions. And then I hope we can have some time to open the floor and to get some comments and questions. So let's move on to the first presentation. The first presentation is excellent. It is about the new paradigm on the climate change issue by Dr. Jeong. So Dr. Jeong, please, stage is yours.
Good morning. Yeah, it's my great honor to make a short presentation today. Since the time is very limited, originally I sent you in your program book, you will see the original PowerPoint I already sent. But after I sent the PowerPoint, I changed my mind that I don't think we don't have time to go over academic version of the story. I would like to tell you more frank and direct, hard talk, and which is not very diplomatic. Though I was a diplomat for a long time, but now I'm a free man, and I'd like to give you more undiplomatic and frank talk. What have we done? Since we are going to discuss about what are we doing now, that's the title I was given. But in order to know that what are we doing now, I think we have to understand what have we done. And I don't have enough time to go all over these explanations, but frankly speaking, we wasted 3 decades ending up non-binding Paris Climate Agreement. In fact, I started my negotiation for climate change since '91, and I spent my whole life for ending up with a non-binding Paris Climate Agreement. But the original vision of the negotiators from '91 to come up with a legally binding climate agreement that can ensure our climate security. That was the vision. But we failed to deliver legally binding agreement, and we end up non-binding Paris Climate Agreement because of the United States. So refusal to accept historical responsibility. And I don't have time to go on. But basically, it is not only the failure of a developed country of accepting historical responsibility, but at the same time, the developing country also failed to accept their future responsibility. They were arguing and finger-pointing each other for the past responsibility, but we failed to come up with an agreement for future responsibility. And then what are we doing now? Yeah, this is what we are doing now. We are blaming government, business, industry, and energy sector, while all of us, as a consumer, we are the responsible, and we have to pay the price, but we are thinking that it is a job of the government, it is a job of the business and energy sector, and forget about what is my job. So this is the situation, what you are doing now. All of us sitting here expecting that oh, my government should solve the problem. But the government cannot do anything unless you provide the political support for the government to impose you to pay the carbon price. But government cannot do it because the democratic government leaders do not want to lose their jobs. So they cannot do it. So you cannot expect your government to deliver what you want while you are not accepting the burden to pay the carbon price. This is the situation. And another point I'd like to make is that we are making another round of a political statement, political announcement for net zero 2030-2050 target. But can we trust those numbers? This is a big question I have. And I forgot to mention about measuring the emission from production. We are measuring the carbon emission from production, which is GDP. This has been a lot of problem because I'll show you, this is the case of the United States. The dark black line is we are now looking at it as our US annual emission. But in fact, US consumes more than they produce. This is the fact we don't know much about, but not very much publicized. This is a UK's case. The red line is the UK's emission. We heard that number in the media. But in fact, the green line is UK's consumption of carbon. So US and the UK, they are bigger, larger, major carbon consumers. But we are only talking about carbon producers, which is China and Korea. China. The black line is supposed to be the Chinese emission. But in fact, Chinese consumption of carbon is lower than they produce carbon because they export a lot, but they do not consume all the productions they are making. It is United States, it is European Union. They are importing and they are consuming it, but they are blaming the producers and that they are not blaming themselves for overconsumption. This is European Union. Their consumption is much higher than their actual production. I'll show you the very extreme case of Sweden. Sweden case is very extreme. Their actual production of carbon is about 55% of their consumption. So their consumption is about 40% more than their production. This is a very interesting case because Sweden doesn't have much manufacturing industry. So they don't produce much CO2, but they're importing a lot and they're consuming a lot of CO2. So we have to think about how we should calculate our carbon emission. My proposal is that we have to change the way we're measuring our carbon emission. So what has to be done? Actually, this is not my job. They only asked me to make a presentation of what we are doing now. But I will tell you a little bit over what has to be done. First of all, we have to stop blaming government and business. And we have to accept the fact that we have to pay the price of carbon from our consumption. And we have to be ready to accept the carbon tax and to transform our free market to sustainable market. And sustainable free market means that we are treating air, water, climate as free goods. But they are no longer free goods. That we have to pay the price of our air, water, and climate. This is what I call sustainable market. And we have to stop measuring emission from production. Rather, we change it to measuring it from consumption. Because if we're measuring from production, it is only encouraging carbon leakage. Carbon leakage means the carbon emission from Europe and the United States is being transferred to China and Korea, which I call carbon leakage. So that does not guarantee global net emission reduction. In order to ensure global net reduction, we have to measure it from consumption, not production. As I'm running against the time, I was speaking so fast. I'm sorry for that. Then what action can we take? Paying the price of carbon is such a very difficult job. It's very difficult for all of us to pay the price of carbon all at once. So I think we have to take a little bit of a gradual approach. So what I'm suggesting here is that we can start to pay the price of carbon for a big investment, large investment first. We cannot impose and ask all of us to pay the price of our carbon emission on a daily basis from our lifestyle. It's very difficult. So I'm suggesting that we can start to pay the carbon price from large investment projects. For example, whether we should build a rail or highway or subway or green infrastructure. So this is one steps we can take. And we have to start to gradually introduce carbon tax while reducing income tax. Because we are all afraid of paying more tax. So one idea of introducing carbon tax is reducing income tax while increasing the carbon tax. This is something, 5 minutes left, okay. This is why I was speaking so fast. So this is an idea from OECD, not me, but OECD. And another, my proposal is that instead of carbon border tax adjustment from European Union, I don't think it will be effective. It will simply trigger trade war, but rather I propose global roadmap for energy intensive industries. I think this, I don't have time to explain it. Next step is that we have to build a private car-free urban mobility, invest in green mobility. Look at the Tokyo and Osaka. In Tokyo and Osaka, nobody is driving car to work, to their office. Everybody is using public transportation. But in Seoul, Korea, I'll tell you one interesting data. We are paying 3.6% of GDP for traffic congestion. Only for traffic congestion. So many people are driving in downtown Seoul, and the traffic congestion in Seoul is so serious, and we are wasting a lot of energy and gasoline, and also we are losing working time because of traffic congestion. The cost of lost energy and working time is 3.6% of GDP. Isn't it amazing? We are, our national defense, which is very high, according to the state of the global situation, our spending for national defense because of North Korea issue is only 2.55%. We are losing more money from traffic congestion, energy, and working time. But we don't, nobody remember this number. We are just taking it for granted. It's not only lost energy and working time, but we are emitting unnecessary emission. And we are expediting, accelerating climate change. This is the situation we are stuck in now. This is what we are doing now. So we have to have, still we need more massive investment in public transportation. KTX, GTX, all of this. How many minutes? Okay. Okay, so this is my last slide. January this year, we had a public poll, and we found out that 48% people are ready to pay doubling the electricity price in 10 years. 45% no. So we don't have time to wait 45% to agree. So we have to start with the 48%. We have to start a campaign to pay a higher price for carbon, electricity, or in other words, renaming it as a voluntary renewable energy payment campaign. So we have to start to pay for renewable energy prices. In Germany, there's a very interesting practice. The ICE, which is ICE, the speed train, there's an option for people to pay green price. If you want travel on a clean, renewable energy, electricity, you can pay 10 euro, 20 euro more, and you can travel on clean energy. It's an option, it's voluntary, it's not mandatory. We need this kind of voluntary differentiation of a price for many items. We can do it. We need to this kind of a different system. Another point, under the Paris Climate Agreement, we have a nationally determined contribution. We are supposed to make such kind of contribution. But I don't think what do you mean by national contribution? I think it has to be supported by personally determined contribution, which means we have to pay. Everybody, as a person, all of us has to pay extra money for it. You don't expect government to pay for you. You have to start to pay for it. So I think the Catholic here, all of us, we care about our creation of God. And that we have to start, the Catholic has to start, lead the voluntary carbon pay or renewable energy buying campaign, and we can be the leader and pioneer of protection of our earth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jeong. It's really nice presentation about really new paradigm. I suddenly feel so much guilty because I drove this morning to this conference room. And I'm really trying to be a better citizen for our future from now, promise. Well, next presentation is really outstanding too. It's the digital narrative for the better protection of our common home by Miss Solange Di Diego from Argentina.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's a big pleasure for me to be here. I'm going to present to you here a project that is called Unfold Nest. That can be really helpful for us to think about the concepts and the ideas we have been talking about in the last 3 days. In the case of Unfold, it was a young media professionals project made during a program held by SIGNIS, where we try to use digital narratives to promote the care of our common home, to spread the values. Yeah, mask off, that's a good idea. Thank you very much. To spread the values of Laudato Si from a very inclusive and open perspective. There you're going to see a small summary of what we are going to talk about in the next few minutes. But first of all, I will need us to agree that Unfold Nest for these first minutes, it's going to be an ebook. It is not an ebook, but I am satisfied if we can start thinking about it as it, so we can start explaining a bit what is it. Why Unfold would be also a good example of what we are doing now to promote this care of our common home. Well, basically because in there we try to use the opportunities and the potentialities of technology to hack the system. And what do we mean by hacking the system? Basically using those tools in unexpected ways. What we try to promote and to invite people through this communicational product was to live an immersive experience, an interactive experience, where they can go through a journey of the schooling. And this idea of journeys of the schooling and the process of learning journeys, it's exactly what this program that SIGNIS prepared for us had to give. I'm going to explain very fast what was this program about. As I told you, it was held in 2020. 9 young media professionals from different parts of the world. Some of them are here, some others are probably following us online. We were gathered in India for a 4-month course regarding the protection of our common home, compassion and social communication course. As you might be imagining, in the middle of the program, it was a 4-month program, but it was a bit longer because the pandemic hit the world. So as dramatic and chaotic as you might think, it has some of those components, but I am also very sure that that pandemic really helped us to get to this point, to get to this final product that we tried to create. And what's this learning journey thing about? Basically to rethink all the concepts that we take for granted, try to start thinking which narratives, which concepts, and which ideas are there inside of us that we cannot even imagine or we just don't realize they are there. So the proposal was basically to reboot ourselves and start trying to create new narratives to explain what was happening around us. The global context, I won't stay longer here because we have talked a lot, reflected a lot about this, and many other of the people and the speakers here have explained it very well. But we can just say that we were in a tipping point of history, and the pandemic even made it worse. So these concepts of progress and the ideas that we had in our mind to explain what was going on in the world started to be useful. We needed to think about new concepts. And Laudato Si was a very helpful tool to make that process. As all of you know, Laudato Si has many insightful ideas and inputs. But for me, one of the best of that proposals of Pope Francis is this idea of thinking of all the crises as part of the same crisis. And where our opener speaker was saying that we cannot just move one piece, that we need to move all of them, well, that's what Laudato Si proposes, this idea of interconnection and integrality that also opens up to a really big challenge, because it seems that we have a lot of work to do. We cannot just have isolated ideas, projects, or proposals. We need to start thinking in moving all the pieces. And that's terrifying, right? Because there's so much to do. But on the other hand, it is also bringing us hope, because it means that we need to work on every single space and at all levels. And we try to do that in Unfoldness. We try to create a communicational product that could inspire and mobilize others to action. We wanted people to jump from this digital media product to the real world, to start making the change that we want to see. And the approach that we used for that was a planetary, dialogical, and interconnected perspective, as you can see here. And what does it mean? Basically that we didn't want only to take care about human relations. We needed to look at it deeply and start to think in the full creation. And we needed to do it with a dialogical perspective, because we really need to start listening to the others, to reach out and stand up for them. So if we were able to do this, and when I'm speaking about us, I'm speaking about the church, we cannot do this change alone. We need to start working with others. We need to be open from heart and mind to start working with others and start changing the world with others. So this was our proposal. As you might see there, you will see some of the amazing work that my friends and teammates have done, including my dear Kike over there. And here is the real definition of the ebook that I talked to you about a couple of minutes ago. It's not an ebook, it's instead an interactive, multi-narrative, and transmedia flip book, but that's a really long definition. Where we propose an engaging experience for the reader. We want a reader that starts reading it and finish the book being another person. And that can be like really a lot, but I promise that if you give it a shot, you're going to see that it's really transforming. So when they went through this path that we propose, the idea is at the end, they can start moving to this conversion that we want to see. For the creation of this project, as you can see here in some of the backstage pictures of the team working there, I separated the process in 6 stages. The first of all was a deep understanding for us of what did we want to do. Basically, we didn't want to spread only a rational awareness. We know that the information is there. We know that many people know about the crisis that we are facing. So we didn't want only to spread awareness. What we wanted was to go deeper in that and understand which are the ethics, the abusive ethics through which we have been living, and all the things that we just take for granted and make us being abusive with our nature and the common home the entire time. So from that starting point, we realized that we didn't have the correct concepts and the correct narratives to work on it. And that was a huge challenge, because we needed to create new narratives. And that's what we tried to do, and hopefully we did it. Starting from the narrative style, starting from the fonts chosen, the kind of narrative that you're going to see, we tried to design a whole new experience to create a really nice product for the eyes, but also for your heart and mind. One of the main characteristics of it is this hopscotch structure, where we try to evocate that really famous novel of Julio Cortázar, Rayuela, where the reader has a really important role. You have a reader over there that needs to make decisions, that need to make his own path through the reading. And it also gives an interaction and the possibility to create through that narrative. At the end, what we wanted was to promote a pilgrim journey. And that pilgrim journey would mean that every person that is reading the book can have the chance to embrace Laudato Si values from his own perspective, from his own interests, from his expertise, from his spirituality. We didn't want to create a closed book where people read only our experience and our perspective. We wanted it to be as open, as inclusive as it was possible. At the end of each of the paths, there is an invitation to reflect and act. Because as I was telling you, we have read a lot, we have discussed a lot, but we need to act to protect our common home. So the final idea of each of the paths that you will see in the next slide when we talk about the narratives, it's to make a difference. That we can jump from the digital world to the real world and start making a change. Here is the narrative structure, a little messy, you might think. I promise it's not messy. There's just a lot of numbers and arrows over there. Basically, it is a 3 paths narrative. Each of them has an independent flow, but all of them are also interconnected through the junctions where you can see that they can change the path that they are going, but also through the content that is inside the book. And here you would see a bit of what's inside, some of the chapters of the book, some of the supplies over there, and in these circles, every time that you touch one of those circles, you are following a different path and an interactive action inside the book. At the end, what we wanted or what we expected was to create a book that has an open narrative where each reader can go through the paths and at the end decide to make another path or go to the real world and start to make a change. And with that, what we wanted at the end was to create an expansive wave of change, because if each reader makes a small change, then we are moving a lot of the pieces of the puzzle. We wanted to promote an authentic concern for justice, for peace, maybe starting in the digital world, but moving to the real world as well, and to respect to all forms of life. And talking about what we have been discussing the last days, we believe that it's possible to build better and new societies working together with people from very different ways of life. And we believe that true synodality enables encounter that leads to transformation. And for us, even if the word wasn't there, we really believe that what happened in India with my 9 fellows was a process of synodality. So before finishing, I would like you to know the entire team, my very talented friends all over the world, and also some pictures of our full team, and many others who were online supporting us. Thank you very much for that experience. And at last, here is where you can find it. If you scan that QR code, you will be able to take part in the trip. It's open and free access worldwide. It's in English, you can use it. Take a look at it, take it back to your countries, share it with all the people that you want. We will be really delighted if you can go through it and tell us what do you think. I will be back to this slide in just a minute, but there you have my personal email and also the talent program email for SIGNIS. I will back there so you can scan it if you want it. Thank you very much for your time. It was a very pleasure for me to be here with you.
Thank you very much. It's very inspirational, and then it seems to me kind of a new paradigm of education. I really have to work on and think about much. Well, we have to move on the second mini session of this, the third session, and then the topic is what we have to do for the future. So next presentation is about how we make our future, handmade future, by Mr. Quique Delgado from Mexico.
Hello, everybody. I'm humbled to share with you some reflections and understandings of some trends that I've been tracking for the last 5 years as researcher and designer. My intention in this presentation is actually not to give you tips and tricks for creating the next big thing, but actually trying to offer a contemplative approach to what's happening and, most important, what's coming, according to researchers, futurologists, early adopters, and creative leaders, who can inspire us to meet reality as it is and co-create the church, the humanity, and the planet of the future. That's why I hope this encounter might be more than a presentation, a calling at the end of this, almost at the end of this Congress, for you and me to rediscover the creative prophets within, capable of imagining possibilities for change and liberation. So I will start sharing some key attitudes for 2023 and 2024. For me, it's always interesting to share insights from creative industries because some of these industries are way beyond faster and much more agile than the church. When you see your ministries, your parishes, I know the reality at least in my country and in the context I work with. But it's interesting how we want to throw the network to make this evangelization. But we always found resource and seek for resources and inspiration only within the church most of the time. Now this new narrative that we are exploring and pushing, and I know many other efforts are happening, can help us to open this contemplative gaze to what's happening outside. From the laboratory I work with, our word for 2023 is nostalgia. And the color we're proposing for 2023 is heritage blue. As seen in many runways, the fashion shows from the capitals of the world, but also fairs from furniture, graphic designers, and even artists that are taking this narrative of nostalgia and this main color. Something that is interesting is that the worst thing that would happen after this presentation or this calling is that many brands or many efforts within SIGNIS turn blue. That's not my intention. The idea here is to take these values that go with nostalgia to explore what we can create in a much more conceptual way. So, following the values of the past years, since 2018, 19, 20, of course the pandemic, we are coming to a point of loyalty, longing for abundance and home, thinking this idea of futures or maybe past with better realities. It's a time for dreaming, a time for looking for peace, decolonization, honesty, and so on. I found this long quote from a Jesuit priest, Benjamin González Vuelta, and he says, you can read it there, that maybe we can go as a church beyond nostalgia. And instead of suffering or complaining or repeating the messages that our younger generations doesn't want to come to the church and repeating these messages that we have heard a lot, we can really embrace poverty and the idea of turning intentionally into minorities, receiving faith as a humble light for new perspective. I remember a really good, one message, very prophetic message from Pope Benedict XVI that says that the church of the future is totally a minority, in the beginning. Then I will jump into the second trend, looking at this wave of how the progression of optimism has been going through this past year. Before the pandemic, we had this sober optimism because anything was flowing in a kind of normal way. But then all these things happened, and the search for radical optimism was something that even Pantone, the lead laboratory of color, proposed with the yellow and with the gray as a response of resilience and trying to feeling attached to a hope in the future. Then, during this year, many experts proposed boundless optimism, and it's interesting how, for example, in the fashion industry, Pier Paolo Piccioli from Valentino proposed a color scheme very disruptive, saying that we can find dopamine colors for uplifting the soul in the streets. But then they realized, or he realized, that narrative was also kind of silly, you know, like only trusting in colors for changing the reality is something that is not powerful enough. So we are coming to a point of realistic optimistic. And for me, the key point for understanding what does it mean, realistic optimistic, optimism is the ability to coexist and to understand that death is walking near us, and many realities that are complete adverse and maybe disruptive for what we know until this point of our journey can be drastical and different. This image that I'm sharing here is an example, a real example of experimental underwater greenhouses for growing food in Italy. The first time I saw this, I thought it was a render or something in the metaverse, but no, it's happening. And this reconciliation with reality, as it is, as Pope Francis said in the last message of communication last year, is something that we are moving forward and becoming much more peaceful with that idea. As I mentioned, the coexistence is a key word for understanding realistic optimism. This example is the Black Chapel in London. It's a contemplative space with minimalistic art that some hours of the day and some days, it allows participants to make liturgical celebrations, but in other hours of the week or the day, it only shares like these exhibitions of art and silence, like reducing elements of Catholic imaginary and other religions to make this a space for everybody. The descriptions from the architects, it was beautiful for me that they got inspiration from different religious contexts and not only from a Christian way of sharing faith. And this simple and very minimalistic space can help us to understand how the construction can look like in architecture. Then maybe this one I will share it very fast, because we cannot talk about caring for the common home without talking about inclusion. And the next wave of inclusion, for me, it's not something only trendy or something that we need to do. It's really a reflection, and as Saul mentioned, a process of deschooling, of understanding how the real inclusion from Jesus' style need to be embraced in our church. I love this quote, stories are so important. If they weren't, you wouldn't see people trying to ban them. As you know, in many countries, realities, not only from the LGBT community, but also indigenous communities, black people and so on, are still marginalized. So I think we as communicators, we need to embrace more and more this calling for telling stories, real stories, and not only following like these waves, but really touching reality as it is. I will jump this one. And maybe this was, for me, the most exciting part. How much minutes I have? Okay. Thank you. Well, since 2018, the regenerative concept was rising and appearing as a response of a new narrative regarding a sustainable topic. For me, in a few words, regenerative culture means giving more than what you take. Because we are coming to a part in the story in which sustainability gives us like an input of sustaining, of course, something, like taking care of something. But in this moment, going back to the first presentation, if you see the numbers, there's nothing more to sustain. Like the system is broken. So the attitude we need to embrace is more about healing. So with regenerative culture, I would like to suggest some ideas, quick ideas of how can we translate this into the different fields and the different areas we are working with. For example, we have the chance to talk about regenerative communication, design, searching for materials, new styles of presenting exhibitions, new styles of creating experiences, not only physical products. I saw this campaign in the right there about plants right movement. And this maybe sounds weird, But there's an entire movement, as you maybe know, like reframing the rights and the presence of these co-living beings with us. Of course, we can talk about regenerative films. Maybe many people here are more experts in films than me. But when we talk about the possibility of entertainment for regenerative like souls and ways of contemplating reality, I love this one from, I think it's 2020 or 2021, La Vita davanti a sé in Netflix. It shares the story of migrants in Italy that doesn't have family, but only a transgender woman, an ex-prostitute, and a refugee kid from Africa. They only have themselves, and it's interesting how the story guides you to a regenerative family that can really reframe what we understand as family, as peace, and healing. I'm sharing the ebook Unfold Nest as an example of regenerative education, not only because I participated on it, but really because the experience of the construction and sharing like other kind of possibilities, not only for Catholics, but also for Buddhists, for Hindus, and for people even that doesn't believe in divinity, is a challenge that we need to embrace to really think about other styles, other aesthetics, other ways of sharing photographies, and so on. If we talk about regenerative, we can also talk about fashion and how this industry that is maybe one of the most, how do you say, like overconsumption, is always generating trash and trash. They are really reconsidering the hegemonic aesthetics they are presenting, the materials they're using, so on. We can talk about spaces, we can talk about communities, we can talk about economies. I would love to share this video, but I think I don't have much more time. It's just a platform of cryptocurrency that instead of building more power or like regions only for a few, you can fund projects, regenerative projects in local communities in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia. And with this currency, if it increases, you can directly support and be in touch with the creators of this project. It's totally for free, without commissions, and it's really interesting how it works. We can talk about, of course, regenerative leadership as a trend. And I would like to ask if our spirituality can become regenerative too. As a conclusion, I would say regeneration as a new value, as a new narrative, as a new attitude for 2023 and beyond, because this is not only for a year. Of course, we can think it as something slow, sober, fragile, silent, uncomfortable, necessary, healing, traditional, but dynamic. And so it is the future. So if you are finding or looking for some key words, key trends, key movements, key dynamism for activate your next communication project, maybe regenerative culture can be something important that you might consider. And last but not least, in the encyclical Laudato Si, as you know, a text is collected as a challenge to our creativity. As never before in history, common destiny beckons us to seek a new beginning. Let ours be a time remembered for the awakening of a new reverence for life, the firm resolve to achieve sustainability, that quickening of the struggle for justice and peace, and the joyful celebration of life. I would like you to kindly stand up just for a minute, half of a minute, just to do a small exercise. Please stand up. This calling say that our time, our generation can be remembered as a time for awakening. I would like to end this calling, as I mentioned at the beginning, not only as a presentation, but a moment of encounter to reconnect with our creative prophet. Just to close your eyes for a second. Take a deep breath. And listen what is alive in your body. Try to listen or to feel. Is there a joy? Is there a pain? If you are tired, to recognize it, to feel it, and with your breathing, regenerate the communication within so that you can reconnect and regenerate communication with the world. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. It's very interesting, and I'm sure the Mr. Delgado's presentation probably invites a lot of questions and comments from the floor, and then also some discussions. So we can move on to the last presentation, environmentalism in everyday life by Miss Jeong Choi from Korea.
Hello everyone. Before the presentation, I guess it will be necessary to introduce myself. As you can check in my bio, I am one of the members in Friends of Beluga, which belongs to FHEW, which means Friends of Heaven, Earth, and Water. FHEW is the ecological apostolate of the Catholic Church in Korea. Anyone interested in the environment or wanting to discuss and act for our Earth can become a member of FHEW. There are many organizations belonging to FHEW, and one of them is Friends of Beluga, which consists of people in their 20s to 30s. Now, I would like to share one of my experiences from Friends of Beluga. Soon after joining this group, I participate in the Reducing Trash in Daily Life movement. As a passionate newcomer, I did my best for this movement. I made 3 rules by looking at my lifestyle and finding habits that cause waste. Those 3 rules are that no delivery, no convenience store, and no tissue. During this activity, I felt like an uncivilized person living in this modern city of Seoul, but I can bear that kind of discomfort. The real problem was that the more I was active, the more tired I became. The pride after reducing 1 or 2 pieces of garbage with struggles did not last long. Every time I saw the garbage scattered all over the street, I thought, why did I make such an effort? Even though I did my best, I can't feel any change. And at the same time, I came to realize that modern society inevitably creates trash. We're in a structure which creates waste as much as it is convenient. But rather than giving up into this difficulty, I still wanted to do something for our Earth. And then I had a chance to meet one environmental activist who changed my mind. He is a person who raised concerns about the environmental pollution caused by microplastic in cigarette butts that are easily thrown on the street. So he has led the activity of collecting cigarette butts and sending them to the tobacco company. Of course, all cigarette butts he has picked up for a year is only 1% of it thrown away every day. No matter how many citizens gather to pick up garbage, it cannot be compared with the amount of garbage produced every day. However, the true power of the civil environmental movement lies next. The tobacco company felt pressured by the fact that so many people had gathered to collect cigarette butts, so it held a meeting with an environmental group for the first time and promised that they will find a solution to the pollution caused by cigarettes. This is a good example of why action, even by an individual, is so important. Action is the best way to show the changing of perceptions and trends. From this example, I feel that showing the change of perceptions and trends can be the best way to lead the change of manufacturing process and structures. When citizens' perception and trends change, companies that respond most sensitively to this can also be changed, and a virtuous cycle can be created accordingly. After this experience, I felt that my own goal of the environmental movement should also be slightly revised. Although it is important to reduce as much garbage as possible in daily life, the purpose of the action should be to prove that the perception and trend is constantly changing. From here, the first question came to mind. If so, can environmentalism in everyday life become a trend? Because a change in trend is the easiest way to show that the perception is changing, I thought it is important to make environmentalism a trend. For this, we need to find a sustainable way of environmental movement in our daily lives. And in order to practice it daily, environmental movement must not be difficult. If it becomes stressful in our hectic life, even a small action can be a burden. Starting from a few easy-to-follow actions can be the key to changing the lifestyle. Through the Friends of Beluga activity, I was able to broaden my horizons to find the environmental movement that suits me. If you know that there are more ways to practice it, then you can take a more concrete approach. For instance, as a podcast producer, I have to print a lot of script, so it's quite hard for me to cut down on paper usage. Instead, I try to use Tumblr when I go to cafes and try to visit vegan restaurants once a week. If you turn your attention to an activity that highlights your strengths rather than highlights your shortcomings, the environmental movement will be easy to start. I recommend plugging as an example of an easy-to-follow environmental movement in daily life. Plugging emerged as a trend while contemplating various methods of environmental movement. Plugging is a compound word of the Swedish word plocka up and jogging. This word refers to the act of picking up trash while jogging. This word, recently in Korea, plugging has become a hot topic as an environmental movement enjoyed by young people. Wearing fitted sportswear, jogging along the Han River, and picking up trash show a cool and healthy lifestyle. Before plugging, everyone knew it's necessary to pick up the trash, but most of young people didn't get involved because it looked quite old-fashioned. That's why plugging as a trend is so important. It is a good example of how a change in perception of picking up trash has created a new eco-friendly trend. The second question came to my mind while watching how plugging became a trend. My second question is this: can digital technology act as an accelerator for environmentalism in everyday life? This is because plugging is also a best example of where digital technology, especially digital media, has acted as an accelerator. Plugging began to spread as some people uploaded it to their social networks. It has the advantage of being easy to do while jogging. As many people posted plugging on social media to prove their healthy lifestyle, celebrities also started to participate in plugging. Some even uploaded photos and videos on their social media such as Instagram or YouTube. As more people track the post of celebrity, the popularity of plugging has also increased. Eventually, companies also started participating in plugging to follow the trends of the younger generation and create a positive image. The plugging campaigns of Korean companies Gumpyo and Black Yak are representative. As plugging has become a trend for the younger generation, companies have tried to capture the heart of young people by using the environmental movement as a marketing point. The point is that environmental movement can become a trend, which can also change the structure of companies, such as manufacturing process. And digital technologies, especially digital media, can play a role in accelerating this. We need to create another trend in the environmental movement. As the blogging show it works, there is no reason for us to delay. I want to share quotes from Pope Francis' second encyclical, Laudato Si' for the end. The history of our friendship with God is always linked to particular places which take an intensely personal meaning. We all remember places, and revisiting those memories does us much good. Anyone who has grown up in the hills or used to sit by the spring to drink or played outdoor in the neighborhood square, going back to these places is a chance to recover something of their true selves. We all have our own good memories in nature. We have a motivation to protect it in an instinctual way because we are also from it. The role of digital technology, especially digital media, is to remind us of that instinctual feeling in our DNA. Helping anyone to have their own way of environmental movement, which can be practiced in daily life, is the direction that digital media should go in this age. Based on the good success of blogging, we must not neglect to find more ways of environmental movement and spread them. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for a nice presentation. Particularly, I really understood what you said because I myself, they joined the blogging team yesterday when I clicked on the Korean Red Cross website for make some donation for the people who suffered from the flood last week. And there's a lot of announcement about, well, we are looking for a blogging team in Seoul area or Gyeonggi provinces, blah, blah, blah. So I pick up one team, particularly near my place. So it will start from October. It's really good because October is really good season in Korea for blogging. So very interesting. I mean, the presentation from your own experience is really touchy. Thank you very much for all four presentations. And then we have two excellent discussions. And Professor Kaz Potter from United States and Sister Kyungja Cho, Marie Carmel. So who wanna be first? Professor Potter, yes.
Thank you. This has obviously been four great presentations and a wonderful keynote speaker as well. So it's very difficult to follow up on all of this. But what I'd like to do is something that I know you're not supposed to do. I would like to disagree with the Pope. I'm not convinced that this is our common home. In a very simple, straightforward sort of way, it is. We do share this planet. But I think what the message of part of the message of the keynote speaker was that it's not the same home for all of us. Climate change, environmental tragedy affects different countries differently. It affects women more than men. And most importantly, I think it has, as I imagine Laudato Si suggests, a disproportionate effect on poor people who are unable to move away from the places they inhabit. Whereas the wealthy, the powerful, the influential have the ability and the resources to escape climate change disasters, to simply build a escape hole in New Zealand where the weather will only get nicer. So I think we have to, I just want to question this idea that it is a common home. Because if we recognize that it's not the same for all of us, then it points to the need to address the kind of deeper structural changes that the keynote speaker mentioned that I think is part of the Unfold Nest project as well. And I, with all due respect for Representative Jeong, I don't think that internalizing environmental externalities is sufficient. I think deeper than that is this very ideology of growth, right? There is an assumption that markets and that our society has to increasingly grow. In fact, there's a demand within capitalism itself for growth. And what we have seen historically, one of the problems anyway, and this is a historic problem, is that the growth of this system has been predicated on moving goods and resources out of the common sphere, out of collective ownership and into private ownership. We saw this with the enclosure movement in Britain early on. Imperialism has done this by taking the land of endless indigenous peoples. And more contemporarily, we see this with gene patenting and water privatization. Even now, our own social lives are being privatized for the profit of digital companies, right? And so economists make this distinction, among others, between these private goods in which the key function, the key aspect of them is the ability to exclude others from consuming them. Whereas common pool resources, or the commons, are these resources that we cannot exclude people from. And that these two, in a sense, have to be managed differently. Private goods can be well managed within the market system, but common pool resources require a different kind of approach. And I would like to suggest that seeking to move more of our economic production and consumption out of the private good sector or category and into the common pool resources or commons pool category is one way to move forward. Elinor Ostrom won a Nobel Prize for her work on common pool resources and their management, because what she was able to show is that the management of common pool resources require and foster some of the key abilities and capabilities that we need going forward. First, it fosters self-governance, the ability of people to work with each other to make decisions collectively. Two, I think it probably also encourages the neighbor love that the keynote speaker spoke of, because these are collective resources that we have to share. It also addresses other non-quantifiable needs, which are human needs, right? The increases community by perhaps leading to the overcoming of the hyper-connective isolation that many people feel today, and by providing greater material and mental security. And because I have to close up, I would suggest that we've seen a number of examples and ideas about how digital technology can foster this sense of commons and shared resources through, perhaps regenerating the commons, if I may appropriate your term or co-create with your term. But I think the strength here is that these can provide platforms for building common pool resources that we manage collectively. And I'll close by just one possible thought, is that perhaps we can think of parishes or local religious communities as a kind of proto-commons, right? Because every parish has limited material resources to share around its congregation. And so and its community. And so there is a place, I think, within the parish or the local religious community to make collective decisions around how to use those limited resources which will further build community. And so I would suggest that it's possible that the parish itself or the local religious community itself could be a kind of touchstone or foundation for building or regenerating new commons. Thanks.
네, 안녕하세요. 저는
Good morning. I work in Changsang Association here in Korea, and I work for the ecological life of Christian. And now listening to all the four presenters, I was able to see passion and hope. And I'm so grateful to see that, because the crisis that we face is overwhelming. And media professionals with their special knowledge and skills, I was surprised to see them ask about how they can weather through the challenges that is posed to them in front of our times. And through media, we were able to bring about change for our common home and overcome our challenges. Net zero and upfold nest was able to give us a thought that human and nature is connected as one. And there are people who are being sacrificed amid the growth that we are achieving. And being aware of that is very important. And furthermore, expanding that awareness and translating that into action. And we need to have an open-mindedness to various solutions. I believe that it is really, really hopeful that we can still receive these help. What do we need to do for the future? I think we need to find ways to change our lives, and the attempt to interpret how we can culturally change going forward on how we live is very important. Viewers are not the object of making money, but we need to understand their needs, and then we have to listen to them and help them recover hope. And that is an urgent call of our time. Also, environmentalism as in everyday life as a trend, I think is a very new approach. But trend, in front of a more stimulating trend, it will lose its power. So rather than trend that is stimulating, we need to make a trend that is spiritual and culturally transformative. A law professor, Gus Spessers, said that he thought the biggest problem facing the planet were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. And he said he thought the 30 years of good science could address these problems. And he says, quote, "I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation, and we scientists don't know how to do it," unquote. In our times, we need spiritual and cultural transformation more than ever. And I am grateful that all of us still have hope in our heart. And in the past 12 years, I lived farming. And in our farm, I made lectures through ecological and spiritual camp. And whenever I started my lecture, I always asked the youth or teenager in front of me on what their dream is. Do you have a dream? What is your dream? And their answer was, I want to be a president. I want to be a pianist, artist, teacher. And some children would say farmer. And I asked them again, what do you think about the time you live in? And these children always said, it's devastating, it's frustrating, it's dark, and I want to die. And these kids who were dreaming about the future, why do they have to speak of such a a dire reality. And through these camps, I was able to find reality with these teenagers and thought about how we can solve these issues. And when the camp was over, one child came up to me and said this. He said, or she said, I am not going to use elevator from now on. I'm going to walk up the stairs. And I said, what floor are you on? And the child said, 18th floor. But why did this child determine himself or herself to climb up the stairs? Because the child wants to live desperately. And at the last moment of the camp, I asked this question again, what is your dream? And I witnessed remarkable change in them over and over repeatedly. My dream is to become a president who solves climate crisis issue. And my dream is to become an artist who draws about environment. I want to be a singer who sings about the pains of climate change. They said, what kind of dream do you have? And I hope that dream will be captured by the cameras and other medias. I believe that when you have hope in the work you do, the media that you create will be like the people that I met in my camp, and they will be able to see hope in the work you do, and you will be able to capture the hope of others in the work you do. In Peter, there's a statement that says,
아니, 한국말로 하기.
I'm going to say in Korean. I'm sorry, I apologize. Always be ready to give an explanation to anyone who asks you for a reason for your hope. We have our journey to take, but it's the same journey for faith. And I would like to thank you all for deliberating together with hope. And we hope that we can go hand in hand together to care for our common home. Every Friday, I go to the city center, Jeong Street, and from 11 to 12:30, I hold a picket to let people know about climate crisis. I want to also call out for the hope that we have. We hope that you can be with us. And in Laudato Si', the Francisco Pope said, let us sing as we go, and let's go as we sing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope to have we have 1 or 2 minutes to respond for some of the discussions, but Sister Jo has a lot of things to say, so we have to wrap up this session. Very unfortunately, I'm so sorry we don't have time to open the floor. So thank you very much for all excellent presentation and discussions. You did a really great job. Thank you.
Thank you all. What a session. There is no such a study session without time delay. We are in time, which means we can have enough break. Okay, thank you very much. And then ladies and gentlemen, please give them a big round of applause once again. This is all for the study days for the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul. For 3 days, we've discussed about hyper-connected yet alone, fake news and loss of trust, and protection of our common home. Thank you very much for being with us and carrying the world. After a while, the closing ceremony will be here in the same place. Before that, we're going to have a short coffee break. It's supposed to be starting at 11:20 a.m. So I hope to see you again in the closing ceremony. Thank you. Thank you very much. Attention please. The closing ceremony of the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul will shortly begin in a minute. Please take your seats and make sure that your mobile phone is turned off or being silent. Thank you. May I have your attention, please? I know it's already 11:23, but we are going to have the closing ceremony very, very soon. So please take your seats and make sure that your mobile phone is turned off or being silent. Thank you for your help. We are going to start our closing ceremony very soon. Please take your seats. Please return to your seats, please. Catholic communicators all over the world. I'm Shihyun Teresa Ryu. It's my great honor to be the host of this closing ceremony of the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul. Having begun with a cultural tour on the 15th, the 4-day schedule passed really quickly. I feel so sorry that we are already having a closing ceremony. Under the theme of Peace in the Digital World, 89 participants from 31 countries came here in person despite of all the pandemic situation. And lots of Catholic communicators and believers around the world joined us online through Metaverse, YouTube, and Zoom. It's been a wonderful experience for me. I wish all the good thinking and caring from this Congress can spread out to the world for the peace of all mankind. There are so many things happened last 4 days. Touching moments, expectations, laughing, worrying, and so on. So we made a short video of 4-day Congress remembering the precious moments. Let's take a look.
Welcome to the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul.
디지털 미디어가 무엇을 할 수 있고 줄은 모든 사람들을 위하여 사용되어야 합니다.
That's a real problem.
1784년 이 소문이 세례를 받고 이런 것들이 기분을 살려주시면 메시지들을 전달할 수 있고 청축을 받아서 있다고 생각합니다. 전국에
SIGNIS is a professional communications association of the leadership role in life
Operating for the Korean people. 제가 아무것도 안 썼는데 I landed. Clear what I present. I'd like to use my
알아고 생각해보는 기회가 있습니다. Our relationships
But after working immediately at all for makeup.
created by traditional legacy with how young Christians should.
So let me just share some of.
Would you like to find a reference to go up in file and digital marketing practices?
May they be political, frankly, of the year.
Faithful truth telling.
Well, this is love right now.
All of us still here.
Oh my God, I was in there too. Wow, what a great moment. I can see you smile, even though you're wearing masks, watching these video clips. Yeah, it really is unforgettable memory. Now, Cardinal Andre Jeong, honorary chairman of the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul, will say a few words to you. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
참 예수님.
Praise Jesus. First of all, I would like to thank God for allowing the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 to be held in Korea and also for leading it to a successful completion. Dear Dr. Paolo Ruffini, Prefect of the Vatican Dicastery for Communication, Ms. Helen Osman, President of SIGNIS, and SIGNIS members from all over the world, as well as SIGNIS Korea members for your dedication to the preparation and operation of the event. Thank you sincerely. In particular, amidst the pandemic of the Corona-19 virus and the uncertainties that arose from that, despite that fact, Chairman Hasang of the SIGNIS World Congress Organizing Committee, as well as all the members of the committee, have done their utmost, and I would like to pay tribute to the hard work of the organizers. Dear SIGNIS members, Korea is the only divided country in the world today, and the remnants of ideological conflict still remain. Therefore, Korea is a country which desperately needs peace more than any other country in the world. In that sense, SIGNIS members who are spreading the peace of the kingdom of God to the world, your visit is truly meaningful
not only for the Catholic Church in Korea, but also for all Koreans. Back in 2016, when a member of SIGNIS Korea, an official, had told me that the decision was made to hold SIGNIS World Congress in Korea, I remember forwarding warm words of encouragement in regards with the hosting of SIGNIS World Congress, thinking that Korea should now play a role for the Catholic world. And 5 years later, the event has been postponed by 1 year, and the need for non-face-to-face meetings has risen more than ever before due to the situation of the pandemic. And despite those difficulties, meaningful programs have been carried out, and for this, I thank the Lord once again. Under the theme of Peace in the Digital World, this Congress has been held. And the Congress has made efforts to find ways to overcome the crisis of isolated individuals, even in a networked environment, and to diagnose the crisis of trust caused by fake news. Also, the Congress looked for solutions to protect the earth, a common home to all, including humans. Additionally, the International Journalist Forum and the International Youth Forum were held with much excitement and energy. Dr. Paolo Ruffini and Nobel Peace Prize laureate Dmitry Muratov, these were among the distinguished speakers and experts who delved into a variety of fields, and I'm very pleased with the brothers and sisters of Korean Catholicism to have been able to listen to them. Korea is a country that has suffered the tragedy of a civil war due to ideological conflicts in the last century, as well as the systematic competition in the Cold War era. However, from the remnants of war, where poverty and hunger have become commonplace, we have been able to gather the strength and wisdom of all the Korean people and raise the flag of industrialization and democratization. As you probably have experienced during the period of this Congress, Korea's strong IT infrastructure and technology have been outstanding. And I believe it was also an opportunity for you to experience the in-depth experiences that Zoom provides, as well as YouTube and metaverse environment, and the mobility of various SNS and social media platforms have allowed you to benefit the most of this truly hybrid conference. To all of you, SIGNIS World Congress in Seoul have probably made you think once again about why we need to seriously ask and answer the question of peace in the digital world at this time. As you know very well, better than anyone else, the media is no longer an accessory in our daily lives, but the protagonists of the current world we live in. Especially, Professor Jeong had mentioned in his keynote speech that humans, we, are all a medium. Dear SIGNIS members, your role is more important than ever before. I sincerely hope that you will take the lead going forward, opening the way for digital world peace. In addition, we hope for a true era of peace in which all people of the world can enjoy the peace of God's kingdom. I would like to express my deep respect and my sincere gratitude to over 100 volunteers who have worked hard to make this event a success. And I pray that the Lord's grace and peace will always be with all of the participants who have joined us in person or through the virtual format for SIGNIS World Congress 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cardinal. I'd like to take his words deeply into my heart that he hopes for a true era of peace where all the people around the world enjoy peace in the kingdom of God through us on the occasion of the SIGNIS World Congress. Next, Jeong, President of SIGNIS Korea, will give us a farewell speech. Give him a round of big applause.
참 예수님, glory to our Lord.
Glory to our Lord.
To everyone, I'm Young-jun Lee Lorenzo of SIGNIS Korea. I would like to express my deepest gratitude to all the participants of the 2022 SIGNIS World Congress, who have gathered from all over the world for the past 4 days to discuss and deliver the message of true responsibility and meaning of media to the world under the motto of peace in the digital world. With the advent of the digital mobile era, public opinion and media are becoming dramatically divided, and healthy middle ground is decreasing day by day. Despite the advantages of instant and fast digital media, this puts a sound balance of media and the value of thoughtful deliberation at risk. The role of light and salt among our Catholic media workers around the world is becoming more important. I pray that the world's media will make a mature leap forward in restoring the essential values of deliberative democracy and social public forum, purifying extreme and immature voices and claims. My special gratitude is to His Holiness Pope Francis, who kindly released a warm message and blessing for the SIGNIS World Congress. Cardinal Andrea Jeong, Seoul Metropolitan Archbishop Peter Jeong and Han-Sung-Soo Daniel, Chairman of the Organizing Committee, distinguished guests, Dr. Paolo Ruffini from Vatican, President Helen Osman of SIGNIS World, to name a few. You have fulfilled the Lord's mission, which is truly meaningful and necessary for the times. I suggest that everyone here applaud and congratulate to each other together. Please share a big round of applause to ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have one more speech. Next, Han-Sung-Soo, President of Organizing Committee of the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul, will give us a closing speech. Please give him a big round of applause.
Cardinal Andrea Jeong, Dr. Paolo Ruffini, President Helen Osman, distinguished SIGNIS members, board members and foreign participants, President Jeong, SIGNIS Korea, and all those who are taking part through online media, and ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you for taking part in the 3-day 2022
SIGNIS World Congress in Korea. It has been a very moving conference with those who assembled here in Seoul despite of the rampaging coronavirus from which the humanity has been suffering for more than 2.5 years. I also know that there are thousands of online participants all over the world. To all of them, on behalf of the organizing committee of the Seoul SIGNIS World Congress 2022, I'd like to express my deepest gratitude. Thank you very, very much. I would also like to thank His Holiness Pope Francisco for his gracious congratulatory message, which contained a substantial number of issues facing the humanity in time of rapidly evolving digital age. We are also deeply appreciative of the Pope's kindest gesture in blessing 600 beautiful rosaries, which were sent to us far in advance of this Congress so that we could distribute them. I cannot proceed further without thanking Dr. Paolo Ruffini, the Pope Prefect of the Vatican's Dicastery for Communication, for having personally come a long way from Roma to actively take part in the Congress. His presence among us here in Seoul was a great enlightenment for all those attending the Congress. Thank you, Dr. Ruffini, and also Mrs. Ruffini for your presence. I also wish to thank Mrs. Helen Osman, President of SIGNIS World, and high-ranking board members of SIGNIS World who have honored us by their presence and active participation. Thank you very much. I also have the pleasure in thanking all those who took active part in meeting sessions. Session 1 on hyper-connected yet alone. Session 2, fake news and loss of trust. Section 3, protection of our common home, and the International Journalist and Youth Forums. We are very grateful to all of you for their precious contribution to Congress. Last but not least, I'd like to thank Cardinal Andrea Jeong, Archbishop Pedro Johnson-Tech, and Korea's Catholic community, particularly all those working in the media, for having done their best in making this ever for SIGNIS World Congress in Seoul a successful global Catholic media meeting. I would also like to thank Korean Ambassador to the Vatican, Ambassador Chu Kyu-ho, who played our direct link with the Vatican for several months. Before closing, I would like to thank all the members of the organizing committee and members of the preparatory committee, particularly Kim Sung-wol Francisco, the chair of the executive committee, Baek Sung-hong Paolo, the secretary general, and the Yoo Ji-hyun Anna, our spokesman and executive, our window to the outside world. Now, I am very pleased to announce that the 2022 Seoul SIGNIS World Congress is formally concluded. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For the first time in the history of the SIGNIS World Congress, this was held in a hybrid way, both online and offline. Catholic communicators from all over the world who couldn't join us here in Korea due to COVID-19, fortunately, have been with us throughout our journey via Metaverse. Let's find out what happened in the Metaverse. Please welcome GG56, which produced and operated the Metaverse of the SIGNIS World Congress 2022, Seoul.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Oh. How are you? Okay, my name is Eduardo. I am from also GG's 55, and today we are going to be exploring the application of Metaverse we have developed for integrating more this community. You know, we are living in times where technology can do whatever. Yes. Okay, so here, I don't know if you can see my avatar on the screen. So we are going to explore a little bit more like the main plaza. Here we have a notice board. There are some messages in Korean that were written by some people that entered here before. Oh, we can read here like, wow, Meteor's platform is so great. Thanks, GG56 and SIGNIS. There is also a message in Korean. Maybe some of you know, like "식력 개회력 축하드려요." Like it's congratulating us for the application. If we move to this side, maybe we can find another avatars we can interact with. Hello, Lee Sung-un. The avatars have made a lot of interactions. You can you can pray, you can wave hands, you can greet someone. Oh, apparently I am seated in no chair here. Yeah. Okay, let's get up from there. There is no not a lot of people right now. Oh, here they are. Yeah. Hello, hello. How are you? We can interact with them by chatting. Here we have a window where we can send messages, or we can also talk to them by voice. Like there is an icon where we can interact by microphone. So right now we are gonna get into another space of the metaverse. We are gonna go to the World Congress Hall here. For entering the spaces, the inner spaces, we can just have to move our avatar to the blue circles as we saw there. Then let's go to this room. Maybe people is having interesting conversations here. Let's find out. So yeah, there is some people here. Hello? Oh, the microphone is not on. Okay. Hello. Does someone here speak Spanish? Ah, hola, ¿qué tal? Soy de Perú. Yeah. You know, this application is going to be released also in French and Spanish. So yeah, we aim to make a good service for everyone. Hello, Paul. The icon of voice is not working well. So okay, let's just get out from the session where the people were having some fun, maybe. Now let's go to the cinema hall. Oh yeah, in this part we have a menu where we can select the spaces that we can access to. This version is in Korean, but don't worry, there's also going to be a version in English. So yeah, we are going to go to the cinema now. We can watch movies here. It's impressive. So let's go to one of the rooms and explore. Here we have all the movies that we can see. So we can select which one do we want to see, and then we can go to the rooms and stare at the movie. So okay, for example, we can go to this one. The movie is called Forgiveness. And then we get in. Oh, some people is here. JH 90, 9410 and X. If we want to see the movie on complete screen, we can also click on here. It says 전체 화면. In English is like complete screen. And then we can watch the movie in whole screen. Well, this there is a problem with the screen which is being shared, but if you have an iPad or some device that can completely share the screen, then it will function correctly. Well, as you can see, there is a lot of avatars there. It seems that not just me, but all of these people is enjoying the metaverse. Okay, finally, let's go to the War Peace Hall. It's sharing a little bit. Hello. Okay, they reply back. Okay, so as you can see, well, many people is joining the metaverse. They are the fact of creating this application is to like make people more connected. You know, we are living in times where we have to take care of our relationships, long relationships, and people should make aware, like not just of in-person relations, but also maintain contact in this kind of ways. We have passed throughout a pandemic that didn't let us meet in person for such a long time, and Metaverse is a really great opportunity to make things back in some way as we had before. I hope you enjoyed this experience throughout the Metaverse, and yeah, from GG56 we are making our best, and we are putting the best efforts to try to develop more and more this application and to give you a good service for the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow, great experience. So which means we don't have to pay for airplane anymore. Yeah. I've never seen Metaverse Congress like this before. Well, all I did was on YouTube, so I thought I'm definitely an old person. Anyway, I think the theme of this World Congress, peace in the world, digital world, did come true through Metaverse. As I told you before, there are 89 people from 31 countries of 6 continents are attending the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul in person. I'm wondering how they feel about this Congress. Let me introduce 6 representatives from each continent and let's find out what they think. Everybody, where are you? Could you please come up to the stage? Okay, the names are, I have here, Father Walter Iezirika and Father Anucha Chiadel, sorry for my pronunciation, Mr. Akos Kovacs, etc., etc. Okay, all the people, all the representatives on the stage. And then you say probably a 1-minute talk about how you feel about this Congress, including your name, please. Who's gonna be a start? Yeah, from the left side.
Excellency, brother and sister, good morning. First of all, on behalf of International Group, I would like to say thank you to the host of this organization. This organization is very superb. I mean, the Congress is very superb. Give them a big clap, please. On the day 1, I think we learned about the hyper-connected jet alone. That means it emphasizes on our duty to be a digital prophet, to reconnect people together through the new technologies such as IoT and blockchain. And later on, and today, we learned a lot about the metaverse. That means we enter as the pioneer of this church, and we can use VR, XR, and AR, combine digital world with the reality. That means it's the new field of our evangelization. Okay, I would like to give up this opportunity to give thanks to international journalists that represent on the forum. They ignite us to work hand in hand to make this world to be better in order to insist on the key point of our church is peace and love. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd be grateful if you can make it short because, you know, we don't have enough time for lunch and then our tour, okay?
Okay. Ákos Kovács from Europe. In 30 seconds, we have been spoken about the diversity, metaversity, and this kind of things, and it's very important, but my first experience here, and I think it's the most important thing for us in Europe, that the unity is the other side of this part. Maybe the diversity is now the mainstream word, but the unity is our message. So in Europe, we are very pleased and very thankful for you, this experience that we belong together, and please help each other to grow up the kindergarten of Jesus. Thank you very much.
Hi again, Solange Diego from Latin America. I would really like to thank SIGNIS and the organizing committee for this wonderful event. On behalf of our president, Carlos Ferraro, I would really like to express they have been working a lot with young people trying to create new leaderships inside and for outside the organization. And also on behalf of the young people over here, I would really like to thank SIGNIS and each of you for opening up the doors for us, for letting us be part, but not only listening, but also really participating. I think that makes this organization stronger, so thank you very much for that, and we are so happy and so proud to be here.
Father Joseph Anusha Chayadet from Thailand, Asia country. When I heard Korea host SIGNIS Congress, I think not only Korea, but Asia together. When I participate in so many things, learning very good experience from another person around the world. The last word, if I conclude, is one word. Experience from SIGNIS World Congress this year is peace. A peace. When I said God be with you, I think everybody here, my experience, peace be with you. Thank you.
My name is Father Walter Hejurika, representing Africa. And on behalf of my brothers and sisters in Africa, we would like to express deep gratitude to SIGNIS Korea and all the organizers of this Congress. Very wonderful experience for us. And the assistance and the availability, very efficient in the organization, making it possible for a good number of us going the extra mile to make us have the possibility of being here. This is really wonderful. It gives the sense of the universality of the church, and it is something really we cherish. Thank you so much, SIGNIS Korea.
Hello, my name is Pamela Alleman from SIGNIS North America, and I will take back to North America your friendship and your kindness and your smiles. And I also leave Korea with an enhanced understanding and appreciation of what it means to be part of and in solidarity with a global organization such as SIGNIS, which is dedicated to applying the use of media for a culture of peace. I also leave with a renewed inspiration to practice regenerative communications. Thank you so much for that term, as we all learned this morning. And thank you so much, SIGNIS Korea. You have shown us what the skills to prepare a perfectly organized event, and you've been very gracious hosts. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You may step down and go back to your seat. Okay, yes. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you. I want to listen to two more people, what they are thinking about this Congress. Who's representing international group, Dr. Sikares Shirakan, and the president of SIGNIS World, Helen Osman. Would you please come up to the stage? They are not here. Yeah. I'm wondering where they are. Ah, yeah, she's coming up. And then what about the Dr. Sikares Shirakan? He's not here. All right. He's already done. Okay, sorry.
So I promise to be brief. How long do I have?
How long would you want to do it?
How about 2 minutes?
2 minutes? Okay, fine.
To the Team Korea, every one of you, especially Francis Kim, you did what many thought was impossible. You created a world-class World Congress, not being hampered by a pandemic. I feel you took it and made it an advantage, if you will. The pandemic has hampered much of our work as Catholic communicators, including in our offices in Brussels. We have been severely impacted by the decline in financial contributions. And so when SIGNIS Korea, SIGNIS Asia came to us and said, we really want to do this World Congress, we said, our hearts are with you, we'll offer our hands and help, but we have no money. And they said, no problem, we will go forward with this. And you reached out to others, to your local Ministry of Tourism, others here in Korea, and didn't let that stop you. So we're very, very grateful for that. You welcomed us to your home, invited us in, and you walked with us for 3 days. You gave us a space and a place to listen deeply to one another in the fashion of the Synod. And I personally feel I've received a bit more insight into the unique aspects of the faith here in Korea. If I may suggest, perhaps the faith came to Korea in an unembodied way via the word before missionaries came. But that faith became human, became real with the blood of your martyrs. And that's been a profound story for me to hear, and I will take that back home to reflect on more. I'm also very, very grateful to the young people who have been here, who have taken that invitation again from SIGNIS Korea and then the SIGNIS board, who responded to that invitation and have come and given us truly your wisdom. You too have a unique and holy story of faith. A faith which also is expressed in an unembodied way sometimes with our devices and with our digital technology. And again, you've given me much to reflect on and how to use those God-given tools in a way which deepens our faith. I feel I've learned a little bit more what it means to lean in and to listen with the ears of my heart. Thank you. Thank you to our young people. Please, thank you. So in conclusion, I just want to say, I think I've taken away from this week that peace in a digital world is only possible if we embrace synodality. As I mentioned at the beginning, I think it's a word that we need to learn more deeply what that means, what we're being called to do, to listen deeply to one another with the ears of our heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. As everyone said, we felt that we're one in our faith and realized our mission to spread the gospel to the world. Good luck with all your activities as Catholic communicators. Now, it is the most important moment. There will be a special statement waiting to be announced. Among the various stories we shared for the last 4 days, we've chosen important resolutions we have to undertake in the future for the statement. Okay, I think I need some more people up on the stage. The statement is written by Dr. Walter C. Ihejirika, Dr. Mejimei Prajasem, and Dr. Anna Yu-jian. Would you please come up to the stage? And one more, Dr. Frank Frost, who is in the States right now and joining Congress online. And the team leader, Anna Yu-jian, spokesman of SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul, will announce the statement. Please do so.
With so many great, incredible, powerful speeches and comments, it was not easy to put all together in this one statement. But Dr. Frank Frost, Dr. Walter Chikiana Ijerica, and Dr. Maggie Pragazam, and I, having tried too hard to include all and also imply with the following statements. SIGNIS World Congress 2022 statement. Theme: Peace in the digital world. Behold, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19. We, the delegates of SIGNIS, the World Catholic Association for Communication, coming from 34 countries, gathered at Sogang University, Seoul, Republic of Korea, from the 14th to the 18th August 2022, have discussed and deliberated on the theme, Peace in the Digital World. Now, as we leave this Congress with new insights, awareness, and reserves, we find a great deal to reflect on. We live in a world where the digital divide increases the gap between the rich and the poor, leading to inequality in accessing the fruits of the digital revolution. We realize that as people become hyper-connected, they are also challenged with the socioeconomic, cultural, political, religious, spiritual, and ecological disconnections, leading to isolation, confusion, and hopelessness. Online games, pornographic addiction, overexposure to violence, and contents of a divisive nature in media lead to destructive behaviors. We recognize the devastating effects of fake news on contemporary society, such as communal clash among people. Vulnerable groups in the society are often the major victims of fake news. We realize that equitable digital access infrastructure strategy can develop a resilient environment and support integral human development. We need to move from individual engagement to community building. As Pope Francis says, God's style is closeness, compassion, and tenderness. We need to weave the web with truth and beauty of faith and hope. Technology has to be imbued with ethics and thoughtfulness. We believe that it is possible to build a new society by creating awareness that inspires us to work together in peace with people of different cultures, beliefs, religions, and ideologies. We affirm genuine interest in marginalized people and commit ourselves to communicate truth and meaningful information to promote their struggles. We urge media practitioners and citizens to take action to protect the human rights of civilians caught up in war and conflict zones. Media professionals, especially, are joined not just to report events, but to engage actively in supporting the victims of war and working towards conflict resolution. By doing so, we can pass on to the next generation the legacy of peace. We need to cultivate the journalistic values of advocating for justice, holding authorities to account, and establishing common ground through well-researched contact and nuanced explanation, so as to provide a guiding light for our readers, viewers, and listeners. We are heartened by the stories of young people from across the world on peace building. Listening to these stories of young people engaged in media activities, we realize their vital role in building communities and promoting peace through modern technology using creative methodologies. We extend an open invitation to the young people of the world to join hands with us in peace-building processes. We feel we leave this Congress spiritually and professionally enriched. We believe that through the renewing power of the Holy Spirit, we can achieve peace in the digital world. SIGNIS World Congress Seoul, 18th August 2022.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the statements. Everyone who has gathered here in the name of God, now it's time to go back to your place. We believe that we are in the Lord's presence wherever we are, and remember that we are all connected in the Lord. We will always meet in prayer as a reliable partner of faith. This brings us to the end of the closing ceremony of the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul, Peace in the Digital World. There will be a city tour, including KBS, in the afternoon. The tour group is scheduled to be leaving here at 1:30 p.m. After that, attending a Mass of Gratitude at Myeongdong Cathedral at 7 o'clock. Farewell dinner at Royal Hotel Seoul will be followed. Have a great time for the rest of the day. Thank you very, very much. There's an important